For months, Amina delivered pizza to a faceless billionaire. One stormy night, the door was ajar, and what she found would unravel secrets, stir forbidden feelings, and spark a battle for redemption. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Rain pounded against the windows of Sal's original pizza as Amina Taylor tied her rain jacket around her slender frame. She glanced at the large white box on the counter, a large margarita pizza, no toppings, with extra garlic knots. The same order every night for the past 3 months. Same Penthouse tonight, asked her cousin Sal, wiping his hands on his apron. His small pizzeria was nearly empty, the bad weather keeping customers away. Same as always, Amina replied, tucking a loose curl behind her ear. At least the tips are good. Sal shook his head. I don't know why you keep working these late shifts. You got class in the morning, don't you? Amina shrugged. Those medical bills aren't going to pay themselves. The mention of her mother's medical bills hung heavy in the air. It had been 8 months since cancer took her mother, but the debt remained, a constant reminder of all the treatments that ultimately couldn't save her. You're a good daughter, Amina, Sal said softly. Your mama would be proud. Amina looked away, blinking back unexpected tears. I better get going. This pizza won't deliver itself. Outside, the rain had turned the city streets into rivers of reflected neon. Amina clutched the pizza box close to her chest, protecting it from the downpour as she hurried toward the gleaming high-rise that dominated the skyline. The Madison Tower, 80 floors of luxury that most New Yorkers would never set foot in. The doorman nodded in recognition as she entered the marble lobby. Evening, Miss Taylor, same delivery. Same as always, Frank, she replied with a tired smile. The elevator ride to the penthouse always gave Amina a moment to catch her breath. 60 seconds of peace before the strange, wordless exchange that happened every night. The door would open just enough for a hand to take the box. No face, no conversation, just the rustle of bills being pressed into her palm. Always too much money. Always the same routine. Tonight, though, something was different. When the elevator doors opened to the private penthouse foyer, Amina immediately noticed the penthouse door was ajar. A pizza box, yesterday's delivery, sat untouched on the floor. Amina hesitated. In 3 months, this had never happened. Hello, she called out, setting down the fresh pizza next to the old one. Pizza delivery. No answer. Common sense told her to leave. Take the elevator back down. Tell Frank something seemed wrong, but something else, the memory of her mother's voice telling her to trust her instincts, pushed her forward. Is everything okay in there? She called, pushing the door open wider. The penthouse was massive, all glass and steel and spectacular views of the stormy Manhattan skyline. But what caught Amina's attention wasn't the luxury. It was the man sitting on the floor in the middle of the living room, surrounded by unopened envelopes. He was hunched over, face in his hands, shoulders shaking silently. Even in his rumpled white shirt and with his dark hair sticking up at odd angles, she recognized him immediately from the business magazines Sal kept in the pizzeria. Elliot Grant, the tech billionaire. The man whose face was plastered across financial news channels, but who somehow managed to maintain an air of mystery. The man whose hand she'd never seen, despite delivering to his door for months. And he was crying. Amina knew she should back away. This wasn't her business. This man probably had people, professional people he could call if he needed help. Instead, she cleared her throat. Elliot's head snapped up, his red-rimmed eyes widening in shock and embarrassment. He quickly wiped at his face with the back of his hand. I'm sorry, Amina stammered. The door was open and yesterday's pizza was still here, and I thought something might be wrong. Elliot stared at her for a long moment, as if trying to place her. Recognition finally dawned in his eyes. You're the pizza girl, he said, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry about the door. I must have forgotten. An awkward silence fell between them. Amina glanced at the scattered envelopes on the floor. They all had black borders, condolence cards. I'll just go, she said, backing toward the door. Wait. The word seemed to surprise him as much as it did her. He looked around, the room helplessly, as if searching for what to say next. I ordered that pizza, didn't I? Amina nodded. Large margarita, extra garlic knots. Same as always. Same as always, he echoed, looking suddenly lost. Except nothing's the same anymore, is it? Something in his tone made Amina pause. The raw grief in his voice was too familiar. It mirrored the emptiness she'd felt after her mother died. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" she asked gently. Elliot laughed, but there was no humor in it. "There's no one to call. That's the whole problem." He gestured to the envelopes around him. All these people sending their condolences, and not one of them actually knew her. Not really. Knew who? Amina asked, though she had already guessed the answer. "My sister." His voice cracked on the word. "Kate. She died 2 weeks ago." The news hit Amina like a physical blow. She remembered seeing something online about the Grant family suffering a loss, but the details had been scarce. "I'm sorry," she said, the words feeling inadequate. "I lost my mother recently. I know there's nothing I can say that helps." Elliot looked up at her, really seeing her for the first time. "No," he agreed. "There isn't." Another silence fell, but this one felt different, less awkward, more shared. "Your pizza's getting cold," Amina finally said, nodding toward the door. "I'm not really hungry." "You never are," she replied without thinking. 3 months of delivering pizzas, and I've never seen you take a single bite." Elliot looked surprised. "You've been keeping track?" "It's my job," she said with a small shrug. "Anyway, why order food you don't eat?" For a moment she thought she'd overstepped. Then Elliot's shoulders sagged. "Kate loved this pizza," he said quietly. "She used to order it whenever she stayed here. After she moved to California, she'd still make me order it when we talked on the phone. Said it made her feel like she was still here with me." His voice caught. "Stupid, right?" "No," Amina said firmly. "Not stupid at all." Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the entire penthouse for a split second. Thunder followed immediately, shaking the windows. "Storm's getting worse," Amina observed. "I should go." She turned to leave, but Elliot's voice stopped her again. "What's your name?" he asked. "All this time, and I don't even know your name." "Amina," she replied. "Amina Taylor." "Amina," he repeated, as if testing how the name felt. "I'm Elliot." "I know who you are, Mr. Grant." A flicker of something, annoyance, resignation, crossed his face. "Of course you do. Not because you're famous," she clarified. "Because you're our best tipper. Sal, my cousin who owns the pizzeria, he has a whole chart of the best customers. You're at the top." That got a small, surprised laugh out of him. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. "Well," he said, "at least I'm good for something." The bitterness in his voice made Amina frown. She was no stranger to grief, but there was something else here, something that felt like guilt. "I really should go," she said again, more firmly this time. "Other deliveries?" Elliot nodded, then suddenly looked embarrassed. "Right, of course." He reached for his wallet, but Amina waved him off. "It's already paid for online, like always." "The tip, you can catch me tomorrow," she said, surprising herself with the assumption that there would be a tomorrow, that this strange interaction hadn't broken their routine. Elliot seemed equally surprised. "You'll come back? You'll order pizza, won't you?" He considered this, then nodded slowly. "I guess I will. Then I'll be back." Amina stepped toward the door, then paused. "Try to eat something, Mr. Grant, not for your sister, for yourself." Before he could respond, she was gone, the elevator doors closing behind her. The next night was clear, the storm having moved on. When Amina arrived at the penthouse with the usual order, she half expected things to have returned to normal. The anonymous hand taking the box, the wordless exchange. Instead, the door opened fully, and there stood Elliot Grant, looking slightly less rumpled than the night before. "Amina," he said, as if reassuring himself she was real. "Mr. Grant." "Elliot," he corrected. "Please." He stepped aside, a silent invitation. Amina hesitated, then entered, placing the pizza on the glass coffee table. The condolence cards had been cleared away, the penthouse restored to pristine order. "You look better," she observed. "I showered," he replied with a self-deprecating smile. Small victories. An awkward silence fell between them. Amina glanced at her watch. "I can't stay," she said. "Like I said, other deliveries." "Of course." Elliot nodded, then added hastily, "But maybe tomorrow, just for a few minutes?" The request caught her off guard. Why? Elliot looked genuinely perplexed by the question, as if he hadn't fully examined his own motives. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe because you're the only person who's been in this apartment in months who isn't paid to pretend they care about me." The honesty of his answer made something twist in Amina's chest. She recognized the loneliness in his voice, had felt it herself in the months since her mother died. 5 minutes, she conceded. "Tomorrow." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, Elliot called after her. "Amina," she paused, looking back. "I ate the pizza last night after you left." For some reason, this small confession made her smile. Good. The next night, Amina stayed for 7 minutes. They talked about nothing important, the weather, the Knicks' losing streak, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Amina was firmly against, Elliot surprisingly for. It was stilted, awkward, but somehow not unpleasant. The night after that, she stayed for 12 minutes. Elliot asked about the graphic design textbook she had tucked under her arm. She told him about her classes, her dreams of working for a major design firm someday. "Why pizza delivery then?" he asked. The question was innocent enough, but Amina felt her defenses rise. Bills to pay. Not all of us were born with trust funds. As soon as the words left her mouth, she regretted them. Elliot's face closed off. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That was unfair." "No," he replied. "It was accurate." Another awkward silence fell. "My mother had cancer," Amina finally said, the confession spilling out unexpectedly. "Stage 4 by the time they caught it. The treatments, the specialists, the experimental drugs, none of it worked, but all of it cost money. Money we didn't have." Understanding dawned in Elliot's eyes. "And now you're left with the bills." Amina nodded. 2 jobs, student loans, and still barely making a dent. But it's not about the money. Not really, it's... She stopped, unsure why she was sharing so much with this virtual stranger. "It's the guilt," Elliot finished for her, his voice soft. "The feeling that you should have done more." Amina looked up sharply, meeting his gaze. In his eyes she saw the same haunted look she sometimes caught in her own reflection. "Yes," she whispered. That night, she stayed for 45 minutes, over. The next 2 weeks, their nightly ritual evolved. Amina would deliver the pizza, which Elliot now actually ate, and stay a little longer each time. They talked about safe topics at first, books they'd read, movies they'd seen, places they'd visited, but gradually the conversations deepened. "Tell me about your sister," Amina said one night as they sat on the balcony, the city lights spread. Out below them like fallen stars. Elliot was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Kate was extraordinary, brilliant, passionate, fearless, everything I'm not." "I find that hard to believe," Amina said. "The fearless part, anyway. You built an entire tech empire before. 30. "Building companies is easy," Elliot replied. "Standing up for what you believe in, that's the hard part. Kate never compromised, not once." There was that guilt again, shadowing his words. Amina wanted to ask more, but sensed he wasn't ready. "She sounds like someone I would have liked," she said instead. "She would have liked you," Elliot replied, the certainty in his voice making Amina's heart ache in a way she didn't fully understand. That night, when Amina rose to leave, Elliot caught her hand. "Thank you," he said, "for listening." The touch of his hand sent an unexpected warmth up her arm. Amina pulled away gently, suddenly unsure of herself. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. Elliot nodded. "I'll be here." Back at her small apartment, Amina couldn't sleep. Her mind kept returning to Elliot, to his sadness, his loneliness, the warmth of his hand on hers. She told herself it was just empathy, one grieving person recognizing another. But deep down she knew it was more than that. The next night, Elliot was waiting for her with something other than their usual pizza. "I hope you don't mind," he said, gesturing to the dining table set with fine china and candles. I thought you might be tired of pizza. Amina stared at the elegant setup, feeling immediately out of place in her delivery uniform. I can't stay for dinner, Elliot. I have other deliveries. I called Sal, Elliot admitted. Paid him to cover your shift for the night. You what? Amina felt a flash of anger. You had no right. I know, Elliot said quickly. I overstepped. I wanted to do something nice for you. To thank you for these past weeks. The sincerity in his voice doused her anger. Still, Amina hesitated. It's just dinner, Elliot assured her. Between friends. The question in his voice made something flutter in her chest. Friends, she agreed, setting down the pizza box. But next time, ask me first. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. The food, prepared by what Elliot sheepishly admitted was his private chef, was delicious. The conversation flowed easily, no longer constrained by Amina's delivery schedule. As they lingered over dessert, Elliot's expression grew serious. There's something I need to tell you, Amina. About Kate. About how she died. The gravity in his voice made Amina set down her fork. You don't have to. I do, he insisted. If we're going to be whatever we're becoming, you need to know the truth. Amina felt her heart rate quicken. Okay, I'm listening. Elliot took a deep breath. Kate died in a car accident. She was on her way to protest outside one of my company's facilities in California. Protest? Amina repeated, confused. Why would your sister protest your company? Pain flashed across Elliot's face. Because she disagreed with what we were doing, with what I was doing. Before he could continue, the Penthouse intercom buzzed. Elliot frowned, pressing a button on a panel near the table. Yes, Mr. Grant, came the doorman's voice. There's a Miss Vivian Preston here to see you. She says it's urgent. Elliot's face darkened. Vivian is my PR director, he explained to Amina, and she knows better than to come here unannounced. It's fine, Amina said, rising from her chair. It's getting late anyway, I should go. No, please, Elliot stood quickly. Let me deal with this, it won't take long. Before Amina could respond, the elevator doors opened, and a striking woman in an impeccable suit strode in. She stopped short, at the sight of Amina. I didn't realize you had company, she said, her tone making it clear that Elliot Grant having dinner with a pizza delivery girl was definitely not part of whatever PR strategy she had planned. Vivian, this is Amina Taylor. Amina Vivian Preston. Vivian barely acknowledged the introduction. We need to talk, Elliot. Now. It's about the California situation. A flicker of alarm crossed Elliot's face. He turned to Amina apologetically. I'm sorry, this might take a while after all. It's okay, Amina assured him, grabbing her jacket. I'll see you tomorrow. As she headed for the elevator, she heard Vivian's voice, lowered but still audible. Really, Elliot, the delivery girl? Do you have any idea what the board would say if they knew you were… The elevator doors closed, cutting off the rest of the sentence. But the implication was clear. What was she doing here, getting involved with a billionaire? A man whose world was so far removed from hers, they might as well be different species. And what had he been about to tell her about his sister, about his company? The questions swirled in Amina's mind as she rode the elevator down to the lobby. One thing was certain. Whatever was happening between her and Elliot Grant was getting complicated. And Amina Taylor had learned the hard way that complications only led to heartbreak. The next morning, Amina sat in her graphic design class, staring blankly at her professor's presentation. Her mind kept drifting back to Elliot, to the dinner, to Vivian's condescending tone, to the unfinished conversation about Kate. Ms. Taylor? Professor Wilson's voice cut through her thoughts. Care to share your opinion on the logo design? Amina. So blinked, focusing on the projection screen. Perhaps you'd like to rejoin us mentally before offering your critique, Professor Wilson said with a raised eyebrow. Heat rose to Amina's cheeks as a few classmates snickered. She straightened in her seat, forcing herself to concentrate for the remainder of the class. As students filed out afterward, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry about last night. Can I explain? Elliot Amina stared at the message. How had he gotten her number? As if reading her mind, a second text followed. Sal gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Amina made a mental note to have a serious talk with her cousin about boundaries. "I'm in class all day," she replied, "delivering tonight as usual." The response came immediately. "I'll be waiting." Amina put her phone away, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach. When she arrived at Sal's after her afternoon class, her cousin was waiting with a sly grin. "So," he said, leaning on the counter, "you've been holding out on me." "What are you talking about?" Amina asked, tying on her apron. "Your billionaire boyfriend, the one who paid double my daily earnings just to get your number and cover your, shift." "He's not my boyfriend," Amina said firmly. "He's just a customer." "Uh-huh," Sal replied, unconvinced. "A customer who sends this." He pointed to an elaborate flower arrangement on the back counter, roses, lilies, and orchids in a crystal vase that probably cost more than Amina's monthly rent. "For me?" she asked, stunned. "Card's got your name on it." Sal handed her a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for making the penthouse feel less empty." "Elliot, just a customer, huh?" Sal teased, watching her reaction. Amina carefully tucked the card into her pocket. "It's complicated." "Life's always complicated," Sal said, suddenly serious. "Your mama used to say that was how you knew you were still living it." The mention of her mother made Amina's chest tighten. What would her mother think of Elliot, of whatever this was becoming? "I've got deliveries to make," she said, avoiding the question in Sal's eyes. When she arrived at the penthouse, that night, pizza in hand, Elliot was waiting. He'd clearly made an effort. His hair was neatly combed, his casual sweater and jeans a far cry from the rumpled shirts he usually wore. "Thank you for coming," he said, taking the pizza box from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "It's my job," Amina replied, following him inside. "Is that the only reason?" Elliot asked, setting the box down on the coffee table. Amina looked away. "I got your flowers." "Too much?" "Way too much," she confirmed. "But they were beautiful." A small smile tugged at Elliot's lips, like their recipient. The compliment hung in the air between them, making Amina suddenly self-conscious. "You were going to tell me about Kate," she said, changing the subject. "About what happened?" Elliot's smile faded. He moved to the wall of windows overlooking the city, his back to her. "Kate was always the conscience of our family," he began. "Even as kids, she was the one who stood up when things weren't right. She became an environmental activist in college, dedicated her life to it." He turned to face Amina, his expression pained. 2 years ago, my company acquired a tech startup that developed a new microchip. Revolutionary technology, but the manufacturing process, it produces toxic waste. A lot of it. Amina felt a chill run down her spine. "And Kate opposed this?" Elliot nodded. "She begged me not to go through with it. Said there were cleaner alternatives, even if they were less profitable. But the board saw dollar signs and I saw a chance to make my mark, to step out of my father's shadow." "So you went ahead with it?" Amina finished for him. "We opened 3 manufacturing plants. The largest was in Northern California, near where Kate lived." Elliot's voice grew strained. "She organized protests, tried to get media attention on the environmental impact. I kept telling her we were working on cleaner processes, that we just needed time." "Were you?" Amina asked quietly. "Working on cleaner processes?" Elliot's silence was answer enough. "The night she died," he continued, "after a moment, she was driving to a major protest she'd organized outside our California facility. There was a storm, roads were slick. The official report says she lost control on a curve." His voice broke. "The last text she sent me said, 'I'm not giving up on you, little brother. Someone has to hold you accountable.'" Amina felt her heart break for him, even as a disturbing realization formed. "Elliot," she said slowly, "what was Vivian talking about last night? The California situation?" He closed his eyes briefly. "The toxic waste from our plant has been seeping into the groundwater. Cases of cancer in the surrounding community have tripled in the past year." Amina felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Cancer, the disease that had taken her mother. The disease that had left her drowning in debt. "People are dying," she whispered. "The company denies any connection," Elliot said, unable to meet her eyes. "Vivian and the legal team are handling it. Standard procedure, deny, delay, settle out of court with non-disclosure agreements." "Standard procedure," Amina repeated, her voice hardening. Is that what my mother's life would have been worth? To your company? A confidential settlement? Elliot looked stricken. Amina, it's not that simple. It seems pretty simple to me, she cut him off. Your company is poisoning people. People like my mother, and you're letting it happen. I inherited this company, Elliot said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. The board, the shareholders, I can't just shut down operations without what? Losing money. Amina felt anger rising in her chest. You live in a penthouse that could fit my entire apartment building inside it. How much more money do you need? It's not about the money, Elliot insisted. It's about responsibility to employees, to investors. What about responsibility to the people your company is killing? Amina demanded. What about responsibility to your sister's memory? The words hit Elliot like a physical blow. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. Why are you telling me all this? Amina asked, her voice quieter but no less intense. What do you want from me, Elliot? He looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. I don't know. Maybe absolution? Understanding? I can't give you that, she said. Only you can forgive yourself. But first you have to earn it. Amina turned to leave, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. Amina, wait, Elliot called after her. Please. She paused at the elevator. I want to fix this, he said. I just don't know how. Yes, you do, she replied. You're just afraid to do it. As the elevator doors closed between them, Amina felt tears stinging her eyes. How could she have been so stupid, letting herself believe, even for a moment, that someone like Elliot Grant could care about someone like her? That the connection she'd felt was real? It had all been guilt. He'd lost his sister, and Amina, with her story of losing her mother to cancer, had been the perfect outlet for his remorse. The next night, Amina asked Sal to assign someone else to the penthouse delivery. Are you sure? Sal asked, concern etched on his face. Lovers' quarrel? He was never my lover, Amina said firmly, and he was never my friend. He was just a customer who tipped well. Sal raised an eyebrow but didn't push further. All right. Miguel can take the penthouse route tonight. For a week, Amina avoided the Madison Tower. She threw herself into her classes and picked up extra shifts at the diner where she worked mornings. Anything to keep her mind off Elliot Grant and his complicated world. But thoughts of him kept intruding. The way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the gentle way he'd asked about her dreams, the devastation on his face when he talked about Kate, and always the knowledge that his company, his decisions, might be causing other families the same pain hers had endured. 8 days after their confrontation, Amina was wiping down tables at the diner when the bell above the door jingled. She looked up to see Elliot standing awkwardly by the entrance, looking out of place in his expensive coat. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. You wouldn't take my calls, he replied. Sal wouldn't give me your schedule. I had to hire a private investigator just to find this place. Despite herself, Amina felt a flicker of amusement. Most people would take those hints. I'm not most people. He took a tentative step toward her. Can we talk, please? Amina glanced at her manager, who was watching the exchange with undisguised curiosity. My shift ends in 20 minutes. Elliot nodded. I'll wait. He settled into a booth in the corner, conspicuously out of place among the diner's regular clientele. When Amina's shift ended, she found him still there, an untouched cup of coffee in front of him. Walk with me, he asked as she approached, shrugging on her coat. Outside, the early December air was crisp. They walked in silence for a block before Elliot spoke. I've been thinking about what you said, about earning forgiveness. Amina said nothing, waiting. I called an emergency board meeting the day after our conversation, he continued. Announced we're shutting down the California plant immediately, implementing new filtration systems at the other facilities, setting up a fund for medical care for affected communities. Amina stopped walking, turning to face him. Are you serious? The board is furious, Elliot said with a grim smile. Vivian has threatened to quit. Our stock dropped 15% when the news broke. And you're okay with that? No, he admitted. I'm terrified, but for the first time since Kate died, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded newspaper. This ran in the San Francisco Chronicle this morning. The headline read, Grunt Tech Air acknowledges environmental damage, pledges $50 million to cleanup and healthcare. Beneath was a photo of Elliot at a press conference looking determined. You went public, Amina said, surprised, hard to backtrack. When it's on the front page, Elliot replied. That was Kate's strategy, make enough noise that they can't sweep it under the rug. Amina felt a complicated mix of emotions, pride, relief, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. What happens now, she asked. Legally, years of lawsuits probably, personally. He met her eyes. That depends on you. On me. I miss you, Amina, he said simply. The penthouse feels empty again. I order pizza every night, but it's not the same when you're not the one delivering it. Despite herself, Amina felt a smile tugging at her lips. That's your big romantic speech. You miss your pizza delivery girl. I miss the woman who saw through me, Elliot corrected, who called me on my bullshit, who made me want to be better. He took a step closer. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. I know I haven't earned it, but maybe a second chance? Amina hesitated. I don't belong in your world, Elliot. Maybe I don't either, he replied. Maybe that's why I've been so miserable in it. A cold wind blew down the street, making Amina shiver. Elliot instinctively moved to put an arm around her, then stopped himself uncertain. 1 cup of coffee, Amina found herself saying. We can start there. The relief on Elliot's face was palpable. There's a place around the corner. As they walked, Elliot kept a respectful distance, but Amina could feel the warmth of his presence beside her. She wasn't ready to forgive him, wasn't sure if she ever would be, but something about his actions gave her hope. Maybe people could change, maybe wounds could heal, maybe there was room for second chances. The coffee shop was small and crowded, nothing like the elegant restaurants Elliot surely frequented, but he seemed comfortable as they claimed a tiny table by the window, his focus entirely on Amina. Tell me about your classes, he said. Are you still working on that logo design you mentioned? The fact that he remembered such a small detail from their conversations made something warm unfurl in Amina's chest. As they talked, the tension between them slowly eased. Elliot was different somehow, more present, more genuine. The shell of privilege and guilt that had surrounded him was cracking, revealing the man underneath. When they finally parted ways hours later, Elliot walked her to the subway station. Can I see you again? He asked, his breath visible in the cold air. Amina considered her answer carefully. I work tomorrow night. At Sal's. She nodded. Then I'll order a pizza, Elliot said with a small smile. Large margarita, no toppings. Extra garlic knots, Amina finished for him. I remember. As she descended into the subway, Amina felt lighter than she had in days. She wasn't naive enough to think everything was resolved. Elliot's world was still far removed from hers, and the wounds his company had caused couldn't be healed overnight. But for the first time since her mother died, Amina felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. The next night, Amina arrived at the penthouse with the familiar pizza box in hand. This time, though, she wasn't just delivering food. She was making a choice. Elliot opened the door, his face lighting up at the sight of her. You came. I said I would, she replied, stepping inside. The penthouse looked different. The sleek, impersonal furniture had been rearranged, creating a cozier space. Family photos, including several of a young woman who had to be Kate, now adorned the previously bare walls. You've been redecorating, Amina observed. Making it feel more like a home, Elliot agreed. Less like a hotel suite. He led her to the dining table already set for two. I hope you don't mind, I thought we could eat together. Actual pizza this time? Amina teased, setting down the box. I've developed a taste for it, Elliot admitted with a grin. As they ate, Elliot updated her on the situation in California. The plant remained closed. Environmental cleanup had begun. Medical screening programs were being established for affected communities. The board tried to force me out, he said matter-of-factly, but I control enough voting shares to block them. They can't fire you. Not without a fight they can't win, Elliot confirmed, but they're making my life difficult, freezing me out. Of decisions undermining my authority. You could walk away, Amina suggested. Start fresh somewhere else. Elliot shook his head. If I leave, they'll reverse everything. Go back to business as usual. I have to stay and see this through." The determination in his voice reminded Amina of how he described his sister. Passionate, unwavering. Perhaps Kate's spirit had finally found its way to her brother. After dinner, they moved to the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle. Below, the December chill had deepened, and Elliot wrapped a blanket around Amina's shoulders. "Thank you," she said softly, "for the blanket, for listening to me, for making changes, even when it was hard." Elliot's expression grew serious. "I should be thanking you. You made me face what I'd become, what my company was doing." "I was harsh," Amina admitted. "You were honest," he corrected. "I needed that." A comfortable silence fell between them. Amina was acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth radiating from Elliot's body beside hers. "I've been thinking about what you said about your mother's medical bills," Elliot said suddenly. Amina tensed. "I don't want your money, Elliot." "I know that," he assured her. "But what if there was a way to help others in your situation? A foundation to cover medical costs for families affected by cancer?" Amina turned to look at him, surprised. "It could be named after your mother," Elliot continued. "And Kate, two women who should still be here." The thought of her mother's name living on, attached to something that could ease the burden for other families, brought unexpected tears to Amina's eyes. "You'd do that?" "With your help," Elliot said. "I have the resources, but you have the experience. The compassion, the understanding of what these families really need." For a moment, Amina couldn't speak. The gesture was so unexpected, so perfectly aligned with what would have mattered to her mother. "I'd like that," she finally managed, her voice thick with emotion. Elliot reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing against hers on the balcony railing. When she didn't pull away, he gently took her hand in his. "Amina," he said softly. "I know we come from different worlds. I know I've made mistakes, terrible ones, but when I'm with you, I feel like maybe I can be better. Do better." The vulnerability in his voice made her heart ache. She turned to face him fully, still holding his hand. "You already are," she told him. Elliot's eyes searched hers, asking a silent question. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question more than a declaration. When they separated, Amina saw her own mixture of hope and uncertainty reflected in Elliot's eyes. "I should go," she whispered, though every part of her wanted to stay. "I know," Elliot replied, reluctantly releasing her hand. At the elevator, he stopped her once more. "Will you come back tomorrow, not for delivery, just to be here?" "Yes," Amina found herself saying. "I'll come back." As the elevator doors closed, Amina touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the warmth of Elliot's kiss. She knew they had a long way to go, knew there would be obstacles, his world, her pride, the ghosts of Kate and her mother that haunted them both. But for tonight, the promise of tomorrow was enough. What Amina didn't see was the woman watching from the shadows of the lobby as she left the building. Vivian Preston's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her phone as she made a call. "It's worse than we thought," she said when the call connected. "He's actually falling for her. The board needs to know." As Amina walked home through the chilly Manhattan night, she was unaware that the fragile happiness she'd found was already under threat. The world Elliot Grant inhabited didn't surrender its own without a fight, and the battle was just beginning. The next morning, Amina woke to the insistent buzzing of her phone. Groggily, she reached for it, expecting Sal with some last-minute schedule change. Instead, she saw a string of text messages from her classmate, Jasmine. "Amina, call me ASAP. Are you seeing this? It's all over the business news." Confused, Amina sat up in bed. Before she could respond, another message came through with a link to a financial news website. She clicked it, and her heart dropped. The headline screamed, "Billionaire Elliot Grant's secret romance with delivery girl exposed." Below was a grainy photo of her leaving the Madison Tower, followed by another of her and Elliot in the coffee shop window. The article described her as an unknown woman of modest means who had ensnared one of America's most eligible bachelors. Amina's hands shook as she scrolled through the article. It mentioned her job at Sal's, her graphic design studies, even her mother's death, all framed as some kind of calculated background to make her more sympathetic to Elliot. The final paragraph was the worst. Sources close to Grant suggest this sudden romance coincides suspiciously with his controversial decision to shut down the company's profitable California facility. Has the young billionaire's judgment been compromised by a pretty face? The Grant Tech Board declined to comment. The phone rang in her hand. Elliot. Amina hesitated, then answered. "Have you seen it?" he asked without preamble, his voice tight. "Just now," she replied. "Elliot, how did they get all this information about me?" "I don't know," he said, "but I'm going to find out, Amina. I'm so sorry. This isn't what I wanted. The article makes me sound like some kind of gold digger," she said, her voice catching. "Like I manipulated you." "No one who knows you would believe that," Elliot assured her. "No one knows me in your world," Amina pointed out. "That's the problem." There was a pause on the line. "What can I do?" Amina closed her eyes, trying to think. "I don't know. I need time to process this. Should I release a statement? Set the record straight and say what? That you're really dating the pizza delivery girl, so it's all okay?" Amina couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "That's not... I need to go, Elliot. I have class in an hour." It was a lie. Her first class wasn't until afternoon, but she needed space. "Amina, please, I'll call you later," she promised, then ended the call. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the phone in her hand. How had things spiraled so quickly? Yesterday, she'd been cautiously hopeful about whatever was developing between her and Elliot. Now she was tabloid fodder, her privacy shattered. Her phone buzzed again, Sal this time. "Your famous cousin," he exclaimed when she answered, "got reporters outside the pizzeria asking about you." "What?" Amina felt. Panic rising. "Sal, don't talk to them, please." "Too late," Sal admitted. "But don't worry, I only said nice things. Told them you're the hardest worker I know, smart as they come, defended your honor." Amina groaned. "Sal, anything you say just feeds the story." "Oh," he sounded deflated. "Didn't think of that. Sorry. Amina, you want me to close up? Hide out till this blows over?" "No," she sighed. "Just, if more reporters come, tell them no comment. Nothing else." After hanging up, Amina checked her social media. Her normally quiet accounts were flooded with messages, some supportive, others cruel. Classmates she barely knew were suddenly reaching out. Even her graphic design professor had emailed, asking if she needed support during this challenging time of media attention. It was surreal and suffocating. Making a snap decision, Amina grabbed her backpack and stuffed in some clothes and her laptop. She couldn't stay here. Not with reporters potentially discovering her address next. There was only one place she could think to go. 30 minutes later, she was knocking on a familiar door in Queens. "Amina!" Mrs. Rodriguez, her mother's best friend, looked surprised. "What are you doing here so early?" "I need a place to stay for a few days," Amina explained. "Just until something blows over." Mrs. Rodriguez ushered her inside without further questions. That was what Amina loved about her. The woman had been like a second mother, especially after Amina's own mother passed. "Is this about that rich boy they're talking about on the TV?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked, pouring Amina a cup of coffee. Amina groaned. "It's on TV too." "Just the morning gossip shows," Mrs. Rodriguez assured her. "I didn't believe a word. Those people always make up stories." "It's not all made up," Amina admitted. "I do know him, Elliot Grant. We're..." She trailed off. Unsure how to define what they were, Mrs. Rodriguez patted her hand. "Complicated, eh? Men usually are." That earned a small smile from Amina. "Very complicated." "You can stay as long as you need," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "The spare room is always yours. Your mother would want you to have a safe place." The mention of her mother brought unexpected tears to Amina's eyes. "Thank you." Amina spent the day hiding out in Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment, skipping her classes, and turning off her phone except to text Sal her whereabouts. and let Elliot know she was safe but needed space. Elliot replied immediately, "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'm working on fixing this." By evening, Amina was going stir-crazy. Mrs. Rodriguez had left for her night shift at the hospital, and the small apartment felt confining after hours of hiding inside. Making a decision, Amina put on a baseball cap and sunglasses, a pathetic disguise but better than nothing, and headed out. She needed air, needed to walk and clear her head. The streets of Queens were blessedly anonymous after the scrutiny of the day. Amina walked without direction, hands shoved in her coat pockets against the December chill. How had her life changed so dramatically in just a few weeks? From pizza delivery girl to tabloid headline, from lonely grieving daughter to whatever she was to Elliot Grant. And what exactly was that? They'd shared one kiss, a few conversations, a connection that felt deeper than it had any right to be, given how little time they'd known each other. Was it worth all this? The invasion of privacy, the speculation, the judgment? Amina was so lost in thought she didn't notice the black car slowing beside her until a voice called her name. "Ms. Taylor, a moment of your time." Amina froze, turning to see Vivian Preston leaning out the window of a sleek town car. "I have nothing to say to you," Amina replied, quickening her pace. "I think you'll want to hear what I have to say," Vivian countered. "About Elliot, and about who leaked your story to the press." That stopped Amina in her tracks. "You know who did it?" "Get in," Vivian said, pushing open the car door. "5 minutes, that's all I ask." Against her better judgment, Amina slid into the car. The leather interior was buttery soft, the temperature perfectly regulated against the winter chill outside. "How did you find me?" Amina asked as the car pulled away from the curb. "Grant Technologies has resources," Vivian replied smoothly. "But that's not important right now. What do you want?" Vivian studied her for a moment, her perfectly made-up face revealing nothing. "I want to understand what your endgame is." "Excuse me?" "With Elliot," Vivian clarified. "What are you hoping to get out of this relationship? Money, a career boost, social media fame?" Anger flared in Amina's chest. "I don't want anything from him." "Everyone wants something," Vivian said dismissively, "especially from men worth billions. Not everyone," Amina shot back. "And I didn't ask to be dragged into this media circus." "No?" Vivian raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Then who do you think tipped off the press about your coffee date? Provided those convenient photographs?" Amina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the December weather. "You think Elliot did this?" Vivian laughed, a cold sound without humor. "Of course not. Elliot is many things, but calculating isn't one of them. No, I think you did it." "That's ridiculous," Amina sputtered. "Why would I expose myself like this?" "To force his hand," Vivian replied, as if it were obvious. "Publicity makes things real, makes them harder to walk away from. It's a classic move." "You're delusional," Amina said, reaching for the door handle. "I want out." "The car's moving," Vivian pointed out calmly. "And you still haven't heard my offer." "I'm not interested in anything you have to offer." $500,000. The number hung in the air between them. Amina stared at Vivian, momentarily speechless. "Excuse me?" $500,000, Vivian repeated. "Tax-free, discreetly transferred to an account of your choosing, in exchange for walking away from Elliot. Permanently." Amina felt as if all the air had been sucked from the car. "You're trying to buy me off?" "I'm offering you a solution," Vivian corrected. "This relationship, or whatever it is, can't last. You know that. You're from different worlds. The media attention will destroy any genuine feeling before it has a chance to develop." She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "This is a standard non-disclosure agreement. You sign it, walk away from Elliot, and never speak publicly about your relationship. In return, you get enough money to pay off your mother's medical debts and finish your degree without working 2 jobs. Amina's mind reeled. How did Vivian know about her mother's debts? About her 2 jobs? "You've been investigating me." "It's my job to protect Elliot and the company," Vivian said with a shrug. "That includes vetting the people in his life." "Does Elliot know you're doing this?" "Elliot doesn't need to know," Vivian replied. "He's emotional right now." vulnerable after Kate's death, making decisions that could damage not just his future, but the livelihoods of thousands of employees who depend on Grant Technologies. She tapped the envelope. This isn't just about you and Elliot. It's about protecting a legacy, a company that employs over 10,000 people. A company that's poisoning communities, Amina countered. Vivian's expression hardened. That situation is being addressed. The California facility is closed, reparations are being made. But if Elliot continues this self-destructive path, making decisions based on guilt and infatuation rather than sound business judgment, there won't be a company left to reform. The car slowed to a stop. Amina looked out the window and realized they were back in front of Mrs. Rodriguez's building. How did you... As I said, we have resources, Vivian cut her off. Take the envelope. Think about my offer. It's the cleanest solution for everyone involved. Including you? Amina challenged. Especially me, Vivian admitted frankly. My job is to manage crises. You, Ms. Taylor, have become a crisis. Amina's hand closed around the door handle. I won't be managed, Ms. Preston, and I won't be bought. Everyone has a price, Vivian replied. You just haven't found yours yet. Amina got out of the car, slamming the door harder than necessary. The envelope remained on the seat, untouched. As the car pulled away, Amina stood on the sidewalk, shaking, with anger and something else, fear. Not of Vivian, but of the truth in some of her words. Were she and Elliot fooling themselves? Could anything real survive in the harsh spotlight of his world? Back in Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment, Amina finally turned on her phone. 27 missed calls, dozens of texts, most from numbers she didn't recognize, reporters probably. Several from Sal, 3 from Elliot. His last text read, I fired Vivian today. She admitted to leaking the story to pressure me into reconsidering. The California shutdown. I'm so sorry, Amina. Please call when you can. Amina sank onto the bed, relief washing over her. Elliot hadn't betrayed her. He'd defended her. But the relief was quickly replaced by a new worry. If Vivian had approached her so boldly, who else might see her as a threat to Elliot's position? To the company? How far would they go to remove her from his life? The next morning, Amina woke to a gentle knock on the bedroom door. Amina? Mrs. Rodriguez called. There's someone here to see you. Amina sat up, instantly alert. Who is it? He says his name is Elliot. Very polite, very handsome. Brought breakfast. Amina jumped out of bed, running a hand through her tangled curls. Tell him I'll be right out. She quickly changed into fresh clothes and splashed water on her face. Her heart was racing. What was Elliot doing here? When she entered the living room, Elliot was sitting awkwardly on Mrs. Rodriguez's floral couch, looking completely out of place in his expensive clothes. He stood when he saw her. Amina, he said, relief evident in his voice. I was worried when you didn't call back. I needed time to think, she replied, painfully aware of Mrs. Rodriguez watching them from the kitchen doorway. How did you find me? Sal, Elliot admitted. I hope that's okay. Amina made a mental note to have another talk with her cousin about boundaries. I'll give you two some privacy, Mrs. Rodriguez announced, grabbing her purse. I need to run to the store anyway. She gave Amina a meaningful look on her way out, mouthing, he's cute, when Elliot wasn't looking. Once they were alone, Elliot moved toward Amina, stopping just short of embracing her. I'm so sorry about all of this, he said. The media, Vivian, it's my fault. My world intruding on yours. It's not your fault, Amina said. Not entirely, anyway. She told him about her encounter with Vivian the night before, watching his expression darken as she described the offer. $500,000, Elliot repeated, his jaw tight. To walk away from me. She thought everyone has a price, Amina said. Do they? Elliot asked quietly. Do you? The question hung between them, weighted with all the unspoken realities of their situation, the different worlds they came from, the obstacles they faced. Not for walking away from something that matters, Amina finally said. Relief washed over Elliot's face. He reached for her hand, and this time Amina didn't pull away. We can figure this out, he said, his voice urgent. The media attention will die down. Vivian is gone. I'm restructuring the board, bringing in people who share Kate's values, our values. His use of our wasn't lost on Amina, nor was the determination in his eyes. It won't be easy, she warned. Your world needs someone like you in it. Elliot finished for her. Someone real. Someone who reminds me what matters. He squeezed her hand. I know we haven't known each other long. I know this is all happening fast. But when Kate died, I thought I'd never feel anything again except guilt. Then you showed up with that pizza, and somehow I started to feel alive again. The raw honesty in his voice made Amina's chest tighten. She recognized the feeling. She'd been going through the motions since her mother's death, working, studying, surviving, but not really living, until Elliot. I can't promise I won't get scared, she admitted, or overwhelmed by all this. I know, Elliot said. I just need to know you won't disappear on me again, that we can face whatever comes next together. Amina took a deep breath. I won't disappear. The smile that lit up Elliot's face made her heart skip. He pulled her gently into his arms, and this time, when they kissed, there was no hesitation. Only certainty. A throat cleared from the doorway, breaking the moment. They turned to see Mrs. Rodriguez standing there, shopping bags in hand, and a knowing smile on her face. I see you two worked things out, she observed, moving past them to the kitchen. Good, now you can both help me make lunch. The normality of the request, so at odds with the media circus outside, made Amina laugh. To her surprise, Elliot immediately rolled up his sleeves. I'm not much of a cook, he admitted to Mrs. Rodriguez, but I'm willing to learn. The older woman gave him an appraising look, then nodded in approval. Humility, that's good. Your rich boy might be all right after all, Amina. For the next hour, the unlikely trio worked together in Mrs. Rodriguez's tiny kitchen. Elliot proved surprisingly adept at following directions, chopping vegetables with careful precision, while Amina and Mrs. Rodriguez prepared the rest of the meal. Watching him, billionaire tech heir Elliot Grant, happily taking orders from her, Mother's best friend Amina felt a wave of affection. This wasn't just a man trying to impress her. This was a man trying to understand her world, to be part of it. As they sat down to eat, Elliot's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening briefly before he silenced it. Everything okay? Amina asked. Just the board, he replied. Nothing that can't wait. But there was tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. After lunch, as Mrs. Rodriguez shooed them out of the kitchen, you cooked, I clean, house rules. Elliot pulled Amina aside. There's something I need to tell you, he said, quietly. The board is moving to have me removed as CEO. Amina felt her stomach drop. Can they do that? They're trying, Elliot said grimly. Vivian apparently did more damage than I realized before I fired her. She's convinced several key investors that I'm emotionally compromised after Kate's death. The California shutdown is being framed as a reckless decision that threatens the company's future. And us? Amina asked. Is our relationship being used against you too? Elliot's silence was answer enough. What can we do? She asked. I have a plan, Elliot assured her, but it's going to mean more public attention, not less. Are you prepared for that? Amina hesitated. The past 24 hours had given her a taste of what fame, even tangential fame, felt like. The invasion of privacy, the speculation, the judgment. Could she really handle more of it? But looking at Elliot, at the hope and determination in his eyes, she knew her answer. I'm in, she said. Whatever it takes. Elliot's plan was bold. Instead of hiding from the media or trying to minimize their relationship, he wanted to go public, completely public. A joint interview with a respected business journal telling their story on their own terms. We control the narrative, he explained. We talk about meeting during my grief over Kate, about your influence in helping me see what needed to change at the company. We make it clear that the California decision wasn't about us. It was about doing the right thing, about honoring Kate's memory, and about people like my mother, Amina added softly. People who suffer when corporations prioritize profit over health. Elliot nodded. Exactly. We turn this from a tabloid romance into something meaningful, a story about change, about redemption. It was a gamble. If it backfired, the scrutiny would only intensify. But if it worked, when? Amina asked. Tomorrow, Elliot replied. Before the board meeting on Friday. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours to prepare for a public declaration that would change everything. Okay, Amina said, drawing a deep breath, but I have conditions. Name them. First, we announced the Foundation for Cancer Patients, the one you mentioned before, named after my mother and Kate. Elliot nodded. Already in the works. I have the paperwork ready for filing. Second, you promise that whatever happens with the board, with the company, we face it together. No noble sacrifices, no pushing me away for my own good. I promise, Elliot said solemnly. No matter what happens. And third, Amina hesitated, then continued firmly, I finish my degree. Keep working at Sal's, at least part-time. I need to keep parts of my life that are just mine. My identity can't just become Elliot Grant's girlfriend. Elliot's face softened. I wouldn't want that either. I fell for Amina Taylor, pizza delivery girl and graphic design student, not some sanitized version created to fit into my world. He took her hands in his. Is that a yes then? To the interview? To us facing this? Together? Amina nodded. Yes, on one condition. Another one? Elliot asked with a small smile. Just one more, Amina assured him. Tonight we order pizza from Sal's, and we just be us for a few hours before the storm hits. That, Elliot said, pulling her close, is the best condition yet. That night, in Mrs. Rodriguez's modest living room, Amina and Elliot shared a large margarita pizza with extra garlic knots. They watched bad reality TV, laughed at each other's jokes, and for a few precious hours forgot about boards and media and different worlds. As they said goodnight at the door, Mrs. Rodriguez had made it clear that Elliot would be sleeping at a hotel, thank you very much. Elliot kissed Amina with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Whatever happens tomorrow, he whispered against her lips, remember this moment. Just us. No complications. Just us, Amina echoed. But as she watched him walk away, Amina couldn't shake the feeling that just us might not be enough against the forces gathering against them. Elliot's world played by different rules, ruthless ones, and tomorrow they would be stepping right into the center of the arena. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Amina dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, a simple navy dress borrowed from Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter, who was closer to her size. Elliot arrived to pick her up in a sleek silver car, looking every inch the corporate air in his tailored suit. Ready? He asked as she slid into the passenger seat. As I'll ever be, Amina replied. The offices of Business Week were located in a gleaming skyscraper in Midtown. As they entered the lobby, heads turned. Whispers followed them to the elevator. Ignore them, Elliot said quietly, his hand warm, against the small of Amina's back. In the magazine's reception area, they were greeted by a polished woman in her 40s. Mr. Grant, Ms. Taylor, she said, extending her hand. Catherine Moore, thank you for choosing Business Week for this exclusive. Her eyes lingered curiously on Amina, as if trying to determine what made this ordinary-looking young woman special enough to capture Elliot Grant's attention. Shall we begin? Catherine asked, leading them to a conference room where photographers and a video crew were already set up. For the next 2 hours, Catherine grilled them about their relationship, about Kate's death, about the California plant. Closure. Elliot fielded most of the business questions, speaking with a passion and clarity that made Amina's chest swell with pride. When the conversation turned to her, Amina spoke from the heart about her mother, about the devastating impact of cancer on families without financial resources. That's why the Maria Taylor and Catherine Grant Foundation is so important, she explained. It's not just about financial assistance, it's about dignity, about giving families the space to focus on healing instead of bills. And this foundation was your idea, Mr. Grant? Catherine asked. A joint vision, Elliot corrected, taking Amina's hand. Like many of the changes happening at Grant Technologies, Amina helped me see that the company my father built, the company Kate fought to reform, could be both profitable and ethical, that we have a responsibility to the communities we impact. Catherine leaned forward, her expression sharp. Some might say these decisions are being influenced by emotions rather than sound business judgment. How do you respond to that? I'd say they're being influenced by humanity, Elliot replied firmly. By the recognition that no profit margin is worth human suffering. That's not emotion, that's ethics. And it's long overdue in corporate America. The interview continued, probing and sometimes uncomfortable, but by the end, Amina felt they had accomplished what they set out to do. They had told their story on their own terms. As the cameras were being packed away, Catherine approached them privately. "For what it's worth," she said, her professional demeanor softening slightly, "I think what you're doing is brave. Both the company reforms and," she gestured between them, "this. It's not often we see genuine feeling in the circles you travel in, Mr. Grant." "Thank you," Elliot replied, his arm tightening around Amina's waist. "When will the article be published?" Amina asked. "Online tonight," Catherine said. "Print edition hits tomorrow morning. Just in time for your board meeting, I believe." Elliot nodded. "Perfect." As they left the building, Amina felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. They had done it, put themselves out there, vulnerabilities and all. What now? She asked as they slid back into Elliot's car. "Now," Elliot said, checking his watch, "we have exactly 4 hours before the article goes live, 4 hours of calm before the storm hits." "And how should we spend them?" Amina asked. Elliot's smile was warm as he reached for her hand. "I was thinking pizza, at the Penthouse for old time's sake." Despite everything, the stress of the interview, the uncertainty of tomorrow's board meeting, the knowledge that their lives were about to change irrevocably, Amina found herself smiling back. "Large margarita?" she asked. "With extra garlic." "Knots," Elliot confirmed. "Always." As they drove through the Manhattan streets hand in hand, Amina allowed herself to hope. Maybe they could make this work. Maybe their different worlds could merge into something new, something better. But as they pulled up to the Madison Tower, Amina noticed a familiar figure waiting in the lobby. A woman in an impeccable suit, her expression cold and determined. Vivian Preston was back. And from the look on her face, she wasn't done fighting. The storm was about to hit sooner than they thought. "What is she doing here?" Amina whispered as Elliot parked the car. "I don't know," Elliot replied, his jaw tight, "but I intend to find out." As they entered the lobby, Vivian straightened, her perfectly made-up face revealing nothing. "Elliot," she said coolly. "Ms. Taylor." Her gaze lingered on their joined hands. "You were fired, Vivian," Elliot said, his voice hard. "You have no business being here." "Actually, I have every right to be here," Vivian replied, holding up a folder, "as the newly appointed representative of the board's special committee." "What are you talking about?" Elliot demanded. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation upstairs," Vivian suggested, glancing at Frank the doorman, who was watching with undisguised interest. In the elevator, tension crackled between them. Amina felt Elliot's hand tighten around hers, his knuckles white. When they reached the penthouse, Vivian didn't wait for an invitation to enter. She strode to the living room and placed her folder on the coffee table. "The board held an emergency meeting this morning," she announced. "In light of your erratic behavior, they've enacted the contingency clause in the company bylaws." "What contingency clause?" Elliot asked, though his pale face suggested he already knew. "The one that allows for temporary removal of a CEO deemed unfit to lead," Vivian said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Effective immediately. You are suspended from all operational duties at Grant Technologies pending a full review." Amina felt Elliot stiffen beside her. "On what grounds?" he demanded. "Mental and emotional instability following your sister's death," Vivian replied matter-of-factly. "Evidenced by the sudden closure of our profitable California facility, unauthorized statements to the press and," her eyes flicked to Amina, "questionable personal associations." "You mean me," Amina said flatly. "Among other concerns," Vivian agreed. "The board feels Mr. Grant's judgment has been severely compromised." Elliot laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "This is about the California plant, about the toxic waste cleanup I ordered, about the fund for affected families. It's about protecting the company your father built," Vivian countered. "The company that employs thousands of people who depend on sound leadership." The company that was poisoning people, Amina interjected, unable to stay silent. That contributed to Kate's death. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Kate Grant died in a car accident during a storm. Any suggestion otherwise is not only false but potentially actionable slander. She was on her way to protest our plant, Elliot said quietly. A plant she begged me not to open. A plant that was dumping toxic chemicals into the groundwater of her community. And now you're overcompensating out of guilt, Vivian said, making rash decisions that threaten everything your family built. No, Elliot replied, his voice gaining strength. I'm finally making the right decisions. The ones Kate would have made. He turned to Amina, drawing strength from her presence. The ones that honor people like Amina's mother, who suffered because companies like ours put profit over people's health. Vivian sighed, as if dealing with a difficult child. This is exactly the kind of emotional rhetoric the board is concerned about. Business decisions should be based on data, not sentiment. What about ethics? Amina challenged. What about basic human decency? Noble concepts, Vivian replied dismissively, but they don't keep the lights on or employees paid. She tapped the folder on the table. The paperwork is all here, Elliot. Your access to company systems will be restricted, effective immediately. The board will meet on Friday as scheduled to formalize these measures. And if I fight this? Elliot asked. You'll lose, Vivian said simply. The votes are already secured. This is merely a courtesy notification. Elliot's face hardened. Get out of my home, Vivian. Gladly. She gathered her purse, pausing at the elevator. One more thing. The board has also issued a formal request that you cancel your interview with Business Week. In light of recent events, it would be inappropriate for you to speak as a representative of Grant Technologies. Too late, Amina said. The interview is done. It goes live online tonight. Something flashed across Vivian's. Perfect composure, a moment of genuine alarm. What exactly did you say in this interview? She demanded. Elliot smiled, the first real smile since they'd encountered Vivian in the lobby. I guess you'll have to read it like everyone else. The elevator doors closed on Vivian's furious expression, leaving Amina and Elliot alone in the sudden silence of the penthouse. What do we do now? Amina asked as Elliot sank onto the couch, his face in his hands. I don't know, he admitted. I knew they might try something, but I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. Vivian must have been working on this for weeks. Can they really do this? Just remove you from your own company? Temporarily, yes, Elliot said. The contingency clause was my father's idea. He never trusted anyone completely, not even his own children. He looked up at Amina, his expression haunted. They're going to reverse everything, Amina. The California shutdown, the cleanup efforts, the medical fund for affected families, all of it. Not if the interview works, Amina said, sitting beside him. Once it's public, once people know the truth. The board doesn't care about public opinion, Elliot interrupted. They care about shareholder value, about quarterly profits. Then we need to make them care, Amina insisted. We need to make this so public, so visible, that they can't just sweep it under the rug. Elliot looked at her, a new respect dawning in his eyes. You're right, and I think I know how. He stood abruptly, energy returning to his movements. We need to make some calls. For the next 3 hours, Elliot worked the phone like a man possessed. He called former classmates who now worked at major news outlets. He called environmental activists who had supported Kate's causes. He called influential tech bloggers and industry analysts. The interview goes live at 8, he explained to each of them. I need you to amplify it, make it impossible to ignore. By 7:30, Elliot and Amina sat side by side on the couch, a pizza box open but untouched on the coffee table before them. Elliot's laptop was open to the Business Week website, refreshing automatically every few minutes. Are you sure about this? Amina asked quietly. Once it's out there, there's no taking it back. Elliot took her hand. I've never been more sure of anything. At 8 o'clock precisely, the article appeared. The headline was bold, Redemption and Renewal, Elliot Grant's Journey from Tech Heir to Environmental Champion. Below was a photo of Elliot and Amina, looking not like a billionaire and a pizza delivery girl, but like two people united by purpose and genuine connection. The article was everything they'd hoped for. Frank about Kate's death and Elliot's grief, honest about the company's environmental failings and clear about the path forward. The Maria Taylor and Catherine Grant Foundation featured prominently, as did quotes from Amina about her mother's struggle with cancer. But most powerful was the section where Elliot directly addressed the toxic waste issue in California. "I knew what we were doing was wrong," Grant admits candidly. "My sister tried to tell me, but I was blinded by ambition, by the desire to prove myself worthy of my father's legacy. It took losing Kate and then meeting someone who had suffered similar loss due to corporate negligence to make me understand what really matters." As they read, Elliot's phone began to buzz incessantly with notifications. The article was being shared across social media platforms, picked up by other news outlets, commented on by industry insiders. "It's working," Amina breathed, watching the real-time counter of article views climb rapidly. "People are listening." By 9 o'clock, the story had gone viral. Justice for Kate was trending on Twitter. Environmental groups were issuing statements of support. Former employees of the California facility were coming forward with their own stories of safety concerns ignored. By 10, the first board member called. "What have you done, Elliot?" demanded Harold Winters, the longest-serving member of the Grant Technologies board. "My phone is exploding. The company's mentions are through the roof. This is a PR nightmare." "It's called transparency, Harold," Elliot replied calmly. "Something the company has been lacking for too long." More calls followed. Some board members were furious. Others seemed uncertain, swayed by the overwhelming public response. At midnight, as Amina dozed against Elliot's shoulder, his phone rang again. It was Catherine Moore from Business Week. "Mr. Grant," she said when he answered, "I thought you might like to know that our servers crashed briefly from the traffic to your article. It's the most read piece in our publication's history." "Thank you for telling me," Elliot replied. "There's more," Catherine continued. "We've been contacted by 3 former Grant Technologies scientists who want to speak on record about safety concerns they raised regarding the California facility. Concerns they say were ignored by management." Elliot's grip tightened on the phone. "Would you be interested in a follow-up piece?" "Very interested," Catherine confirmed. "These sources specifically asked to speak with you and Ms. Taylor present. They say you're the only executive they trust." After hanging up, Elliot gently woke Amina to share the news. "It's happening," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "People are standing up, speaking out." "Just like Kate would have wanted," Amina said softly. They fell asleep on the couch, exhausted but hopeful, the untouched pizza forgotten as the world around them shifted on its axis. The next morning, they were awakened by the insistent buzzing of the Penthouse intercom. "Mr. Grant," came Frank's voice when Elliot answered. "There's a group of people here to see you. They say they're from the board of Grant Technologies." Elliot exchanged a glance with Amina. "Send them up." They quickly freshened up, Amina borrowing one of Elliot's shirts to change into. When the elevator doors opened, 5 people stepped out, 3 men and 2 women, all in impeccable business attire. "Harold," Elliot greeted the eldest, a distinguished man with silver hair. "This is unexpected." "These are unexpected times," Harold replied grimly. "May we sit down?" Once they were all seated in the living room, an uncomfortable silence fell. Amina felt acutely out of place in Elliot's oversized shirt, facing these polished executives. "I assume you're here about the article," Elliot said finally. "Among other things," Harold confirmed. "Elliot, what you did, going public like this without board approval, it's unprecedented." "So is suspending a CEO without proper cause," Elliot countered. One of the women, a sharp-featured executive named Diana, leaned forward. "The public reaction has been significant. Our stock opened down 15% this morning." "But our mentions are up 800%, added a younger board member, Jonathan. "And not all negative. The environmental community is rallying behind us, calling us pioneers for taking responsibility." "Pioneers?" Elliot repeated, surprised. "That's overstating it," Harold said quickly. "But there is a narrative emerging that could be beneficial if properly managed." Amina couldn't hold back a laugh. You mean you're trying to figure out how to spin this to your advantage? The board members looked at her with varying degrees of discomfort and curiosity. Miss Taylor, I presume, Harold said. You've become quite central to this situation. I didn't ask to be, Amina replied. Nevertheless, here we are, Diana said, briskly. And decisions must be made. She turned to Elliot. The board held an emergency call at 5 this morning. The vote was 3-2 to rescind your suspension, contingent on certain agreements. Elliot raised an eyebrow. What kind of agreements? The California facility will remain closed, Harold said. The cleanup efforts will continue. The medical fund for affected families will proceed as announced. Amina felt a surge of triumph, quickly tempered by suspicion. And the catch? The company issues a statement that these decisions were the result of months of careful consideration, not a hasty response to personal tragedy, Diana explained. We frame it as a planned strategic pivot toward more sustainable practices. You want to pretend this was the plan all along? Elliot translated. To save face. To save the company, Harold corrected. Your company, Elliot. Your father's legacy. Elliot was quiet for a long moment. And the foundation, the Maria Taylor and Catherine Grant Foundation? A commendable philanthropic initiative, Jonathan said smoothly. One the company would be proud to support, within reasonable limits. Elliot looked at Amina, a silent question in his eyes. She gave a small nod. All right, Elliot said, turning back to the board members. I'll agree to your narrative, on one condition. Which is? Harold asked warily. Vivian Preston is permanently removed from any association with Grant Technologies, Elliot stated firmly. And the board is restructured to include a permanent ethics committee with actual enforcement power. The board members exchanged glances. Ms. Preston has already tendered her resignation, Diana informed them. As for the ethics committee, that would require bylaw changes, shareholder approval. Then get it, Elliot said, his voice brooking no argument. Because without that, there's no deal. And I promise you, what happened yesterday was just the beginning of what Amina and I can do when we put our minds to it. Another exchange of glances between the board members. We'll take your proposal to the full board, Harold finally said. I believe we can reach an agreement. As they filed back toward the elevator, Jonathan hung back. For what it's worth, he said quietly to Elliot, Kate would be proud of you. She and I were friends in college. She always said you'd do the right thing eventually. When they were finally alone again, Amina turned to Elliot, amazed. Did that just happen? Did we just win? Elliot pulled her into his arms. It's not a complete victory. There's still so much work to do, but yes, we won the first battle. And the foundation? Amina asked. It's really happening. It's really happening, Elliot confirmed. In fact, I already filed the paperwork yesterday before the interview. It exists, Amina. The Maria Taylor and Catherine Grant Foundation is real. Tears sprang to Amina's eyes. My mother would be so proud. So would Kate. I think they brought us together, Elliot said softly. Two stubborn spirits looking out for us even now. Amina smiled through her tears. Maybe they did, in the mois. Weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. The board, true to their word, approved the ethics committee. Vivian Preston disappeared from New York corporate circles, reportedly taking a position with a rival firm in Silicon Valley. The Maria Taylor and Catherine Grant Foundation launched, officially with a gala event where Amina, wearing a simple but elegant black dress, gave a speech that left not a dry eye in the house. Cancer took my mother, she told the assembled crowd of New York's elite, and it took my ability to believe that things could change, that systems could be made more just, that loss could be transformed into purpose. She looked at Elliot, standing, proudly at her side. But sometimes life delivers unexpected gifts to your door. Sometimes healing comes in the form of a pizza order, a conversation, a connection that reminds you that you're not alone in your grief or in your hope. True to her word, Amina continued her graphic design studies. She worked part-time at Sal's, despite Elliot's assurance that it wasn't financially necessary. It's not about the money, she explained when he asked. It's about remembering where I came from, who I am. Elliot understood. just as he understood why she insisted on keeping her small apartment, even though she spent most nights at the Penthouse. Someday, she told him, I'll be ready to let it go, but not yet. And Elliot, who had learned the hard way that true love meant supporting someone's journey rather than trying to control it, simply kissed her and said, "Whenever you're ready." 6 months after their fateful encounter in the rain-drenched penthouse, Elliot took Amina back to where it all began. The same pizza order was waiting on the coffee table. Large margarita, no toppings, extra garlic knots. "For old time's sake?" Amina asked with a smile as she settled beside him on the couch. "Something like that," Elliot replied, looking uncharacteristically nervous. As Amina reached for a slice, she noticed a small black velvet box nestled among the garlic knots. "Elliot," she whispered, her heart suddenly racing. "I had this whole speech prepared," he said, taking the box and moving to kneel before her. "About how you changed my life, about how you made me better, about how I never want to deliver or to receive another pizza without you by my side." He opened the box, revealing a stunning but tasteful diamond ring. "But all I really need to say is this. I love you, Amina Taylor. Will you marry me?" Amina's mind flashed back to that rainy night, when she'd found a broken man surrounded by unopened condolence cards, to the gradual healing they'd found together, to the battles they'd faced and won. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and certain. "Yes, I will." As Elliot slipped the ring onto her finger, Amina felt a sense of completion she hadn't experienced since losing her mother. Not because Elliot had filled that void, no one ever could, but because he had helped her transform her grief into purpose, into love, into a future she could believe in. That night, as they stood on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city lights, Amina thought she felt a gentle breeze that carried the faintest scent of her mother's perfume. Beside her, Elliot suddenly smiled as if hearing a voice only he could recognize. "Do you ever feel like they're still with us?" he asked softly. "Kate and your mother?" Amina leaned her head against his shoulder, her engagement ring catching the moonlight. "I think they've been with us all along." In the distance, a delivery scooter from Sal's Original Pizza zipped through the Manhattan streets, carrying someone else's order, someone else's story. But the most unexpected delivery of all had already been made. 2 broken hearts, finding each other against all odds, healing together in the most unlikely of circumstances. "I love you," Amina whispered to Elliot, to the night, to the spirits, watching over them. And somewhere carried on that same mysterious breeze came the feeling of absolute certainty that this love, this purpose, this unexpected journey was exactly as it was meant to be. The end.